Speaking next, opening the case for the opposition, is our resident TikTok queen, PPE student from Lincoln College, Hannah Edwards.
Send her victorious, happy, and glorious, long to reign over us, God save the Queen. If you felt something when I read those words, you're probably not someone I need to convince tonight. I would expect that you feel the monarchy is something great, that they represent the nation, and that they are public servants rather than mere celebrities. It's those of you who think quite differently that I need to convince, who think that the monarchy is an overhyped celebrity cesspit, who are sick of headlines like Banned Old Duke of York, Queen of Diets Kate Middleton, and Queen orders a hard Megxit. Regardless of where you stand, I believe there are three ways in which we win this debate tonight, and that is with three main differences between monarchy and celebrity: lineage, life, and legacy. We need to be clear on what we're talking about, though. We have to understand that this is not a debate about whether the monarchy is good or bad. I'm not going to defend or denounce the monarchy to you tonight. Instead, I'm going to prove to you why the monarchy is far more than mere celebrity. So what is celebrity in this debate? Well, celebrity simply means well-known. Perhaps in this context, we might say nothing but a source of scandal. So now we're clear on what the proposition is arguing. They're telling you that the monarchy is simply a group of well-known people for tabloids to write about. Crucially, they're saying that their influence is no different to that of the most famous celebrity. Now, if you Google who the most famous celebrity in the world is, you get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So when I'm going through my arguments tonight, I'll keep asking you the same question. Can Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson do this? But before I get into all of that, it falls on me to introduce the speakers from the proposition. You just heard from Joe Murray. He's a first-year law student at Pembroke College, who I've been lucky enough to get to know this term. As well as boasting an impressive LinkedIn, Joe is a proud northerner. So for any southerners that didn't manage to catch his speech just now, don't worry, you didn't miss anything. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Ellie Woodacre, a reader in Renaissance history at the University of Winchester. She is well equipped for tonight's debate with areas of expertise in queenship and royal studies. She's also American. Now, I could probably end my comments there, but at risk of looking like a bitter Brit, I will say that the Americans are the only people, one of the only people, who have managed to drive away the British monarchy, which is pretty impressive. Later, you'll be addressed by Jack Royston. He's chief royal correspondent at Newsweek, who has also written for The Sun. I had a quick look through Jack's Twitter before this debate. In the last week alone, Jack has tweeted 12 different articles about the royal family. I don't have a roast for Jack tonight, I just have more of a suggestion. Get a hobby. Juggling, caricatures, pommel horse, we could talk about it later. And finally, you'll hear from Danny Yates. He's a second-year chemist and a close friend of mine. Danny is also JCR president, so he might know a bit about celebrity himself. But given that it's a Worcester college, it makes sense that he's confused in a debate about heading important and respected institutions. These are your speakers, Mr. President, and they are very welcome. And just before I return to my speech, I would like to thank Mr. President for allowing me to speak tonight. I've been passionate about debating for many years now, and this is genuinely a dream come true for me. Let's return now to those three key differences. Firstly, lineage. The difference between monarchy and celebrity begins where they begin: birth. Celebrities are not born into institutions of power. Their parents don't determine the fact that someday they will be viewed as the figurehead of a nation. The Kardashians are trying, but they haven't got there yet. By contrast, monarchs, from the day they are born, are destined to a life totally different to anything any of us can imagine. This is a fairly obvious point, but I believe quite a serious one. Many people feel pressure from their parents growing up. They can be pushed into hobbies, later career paths that were never really their choice. But now imagine that, but it's a piece of parliamentary legislation. That's the difference. Whatever you think about Megxit, you've got to have a bit of sympathy for Harry, because having the "it's not my dream, Dad, it's yours" chat in front of 65 million people is probably quite difficult. And you may think, poor them, it must be really hard to be born into a life of luxury. And that's totally fine. But you can't escape the fact that it's not mere celebrity. Before we get to the end of lineage then, let's do a quick check with my question from earlier. Was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson born with a national decree that said he would one day be King of America? No, he managed to do that all by himself, and we should be proud of that. So the first point stands, and we've established a difference from day dot. Moving on to life then. I'll do a bit of preemptory rebuttal here and say that there are similarities in the lives of celebrities and monarchs, as Joe pointed out. They're both idolized or despised en masse. They're both treated differently to us average beings, and they both have journalists, who will remain nameless, who are making their lives totally miserable. And I'll happily concede that the media has increasingly treated celebrities like the royal family like celebrities. But I've got some sad and disappointing news for you all tonight. The media doesn't always tell us the truth. We all know that simply being perceived as something doesn't make it so. On top of this, I would like to point out the difference between the royals that we view as celebrity and those that we don't. The Queen has always been incredibly private, as has Charles, as has William. We might compare this with the media engagement and scandal produced by Harry or Andrew. There seems to be a difference between the royals that become monarchs and those that don't. They can afford to behave differently because they're not heirs to the throne. They're never going to be head of state. Note that the royals that are in line have distanced themselves from the celebrity culture as much as they can. My last response to the proposition here is that using Harry and Meghan as an example in this debate is pretty weak because they're not the monarchy. They have actively chosen to become mere celebrity. So any celebrity culture associated with them doesn't harm our argument at all. If anything, it helps our point. But let's bring it back to the life of a monarch. Try as the proposition might to distract you by talking about these tabloid scandals and diminishing powers, don't let them fool you. The life of a monarch goes far beyond celebrity. For example, the Queen's average Wednesday looks like an audience with the Prime Minister. And the other days are filled with over 170 ambassadors and diplomats that reside in London at any given time. If that just sounds like a lot of fancy coffees to you, let's read through some of the other things that the Queen can do. Appoint and dismiss the Prime Minister, issue passports, create peers, command the armed forces, appoint bishops, ratify treaties, dissolve Parliament. Can Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson do any of these things? I'd love to see it, but I don't think he can. And the proposition will try to say this too, but they're not just for show. Take 1974, when the Queen had to grant the dissolution of Parliament on the request of Edward Heath and appoint Harold Wilson the new Prime Minister. It's clear then that the life of a monarch contains power that is so much greater than mere celebrity power could ever be. So finally, let's talk about legacy. No one celebrity could ever come close to the legacy of the monarchy, because a celebrity is a person, but the monarchy is an institution. Instead of ending with death and leaving the legacy of one person, as a celebrity would when they die, the monarchy lives on. It goes back over 1,000 years, and its impact will never be forgotten. Whether you like it or not, you cannot erase the legacy of the monarchy. It's built into our society, in the towns we live in, the theatres we sit in, the churches we pray in. You can't travel far around the UK without walking down a Queen so-and-so street or a King such-and-such pub. And it reaches around the world. It can be good. Trade among the Commonwealth countries is currently valued somewhere around $700 billion. This kind of economic impact has tangible benefits for the lives of everyday people. But as we know, it can also be far from good. We saw protests earlier this year when Kate and William visited the Caribbean. The royal family's links to slavery have not been forgotten, and nor should they be. It's beyond my speech to truly get into these impacts, but the point is clear. The legacy of the royal family is so much more than mere celebrity. Even if celebrities are able to donate millions to charity, build infrastructure, or promote trade, they would never come close to the legacy of the monarchy, whether that be its positive impacts or its negative ones. I'm not going to ask you whether Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will leave the legacy of a 1,000-year-old institution with global power, because that would be silly. But it is what the proposition are trying to argue tonight, so I rest my case. We've come to the end of my speech now, and covered my 3 conveniently alliterative titles. You might think other headlines would have worked better, and dare say my speech writing might have been a bit quicker if I hadn't picked them this way. But I've done so for a reason, and that's because I know how high the quality of debate will be tonight. After listening to so many excellent debates myself, I know how the earlier arguments can appear to be shot down by the words by the time we get to the end. But I want you to remember these 3 points when you go to vote tonight. Ask yourself whether the lineage of a monarch is something that could possibly be the same as a celebrity, whether the life they lead has the same impact, whether the legacy they leave behind is nothing more. I believe you will answer no, and I believe you should vote no tonight. Thank you.